Hello everyone, my name is Abigail Barella, and today I wanted to talk to you about something that comes up a lot in conversation with clients and something that a lot of people message me about and ask me about, and it is something called déjà vu. Maybe you've heard of it. Déjà vu comes from the French word that means already seen. I've already seen this. And déjà vu is not the only déjà that there is. Déjà means already, and déjà my French, sorry guys. Déjà visité, I've already visited here. So if you're on vacation and you go somewhere and you're like, this feels so familiar, that is more of, I've already visited here. There is déjà vécu, I hope that's right. Already experienced, or I've already lived this life. Hello, I've been here. And so you might feel that way when you go into a book and you see a certain kind of home that isn't currently manufactured, and you're like, I've lived in a house like that, okay? And then déjà and to do, already heard. So when you hear a song and you're like, where have I heard this song before? And this has happened to me a lot, particularly with Celtic songs or songs that sound very familiar that I even, if you guys have ever heard, like just started crying when you hear a song that you've never heard, you don't think you've heard before, but it feels familiar. That's what we're talking about, okay? And so there's so many different ways of looking at this. And of course, there's the really cold, harsh facts, right? And then there's the spirituality. And so I love meshing the two. That's one of my favorite things to do, and just using my own intuition. Now, I am a person who was a kid who had déjà vu all the time, okay? And I remember my sister's best friend saying to me, you know, what I think of déjà vu is that it's when things are just working right in your life, like you're on the right path, like it's a yes. And you know, I think about how wise that was of her. I have no idea how old she was when she told me that. Maybe she was 15. And it's interesting because doing a little bit of research, it's actually from the ages of 15 to 25 that most people tend to notice more déjà vu than normal. And I think this is really interesting if you look at brain development, and our brains are still developing into our 20s. And what we know is that déjà vu comes from a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is dopamine is our motivation molecule. It motivates us to move forward. And so I think it's interesting coming back to this idea that just by her intuition, my sister's best friend said, you know, I think it's when everything's working right and you're like on the right path. Because it totally matches up with the science. So people that have a really low dopamine in their bodies, and there's certain illnesses such as Parkinson's, where it literally makes moving and moving forward in your life quite difficult and impossible at times. And so what dopamine does is it boosts your drive, your focus, your concentration, your ability to meet goals, okay? And then there's the unhealthy ways of getting more dopamine in your life. Addiction, cocaine. We know our phones are as addictive as cocaine. So technology, our phones, refreshing our screens, sliding down, scrolling, that all releases dopamine. When you see the notifications, when you see a notification from your Instagram feed or from your Facebook feed, that releases dopamine because you're moving forward, you're moving something, and it's obviously something's happening because of it, and it's a reward. And so that's an unhealthy way to release dopamine. We have addictions, we have certain unhealthy foods that release dopamine in an unhealthy way, okay? So I think it's really interesting to think about dopamine, and I always love looking at one of my favorite people that lived, Carl Jung, and he says that déjà vu it's just literally like the science of synchronicity, of coincidence, and that there's meaning in it all. And so we can look at the science and we can say, okay, there's just this dopamine, and if you have more of it, we know that you're going to have more déjà vu, and that's it. You know, déjà vu doesn't have any meaning. It's just like a chemical thing in your brain. Well, for me, I'm like, why? Why is that happening? Why would we have experiences where it feels so familiar, it's unmistakable, or it feels like it's already happened? And so if we look at consciousness and we look at déjà vu, there's different beliefs about that. So there's déjà vu that it's just your the frequency of where you're at and what you're doing. So this is like more if like you walk into a new space, or you get off the airplane and you're in a new area and it feels so familiar that you're like matching a familiar frequency, so to speak. So that's one thing that more of the archetypes match up in terms of like Carl Jung's work. Another belief is that it's timeline matching. So maybe time isn't as linear as we think. Maybe it's cyclical. And so this is something that I always work with, because I've had dreams of places that I'm like, I don't know what that place is. And then like 10 years later, I end up in that place and I'm like, oh, okay, here we are. So for me personally, I know that time is not linear, but so it's kind of like a timeline hop where you're like, okay, I've been here. Yeah, it's familiar. I get it. It all makes sense now. And then also it can be just messages from our higher self. And this is the same thing like when you see 11:11 and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I just caught the time at that certain time frame. It's just a synchronicity that lets you know that you're on the right path, that you're tuned in to something bigger than yourself. So, and then also other people talk about parallel universe, or parallel lives, and that we're living different lives at different times. I personally struggle with this belief at times, but there's definitely tons of different ways of looking at déjà vu, and I'd love to hear in the comments what you think of with déjà vu. And then I also just want to end with some healthy ways to release more dopamine in your life so that you maybe get more déjà vus if you like them. So healthy ways, let's see, I wrote some things down. We know that turmeric in particular helps with reducing inflammation and helps with releasing more dopamine. So turmeric, especially when you mix it with black pepper, so eating Indian food is a great way to actually get more dopamine in your life, especially with spicy food. Spicy food actually releases oxytocin as well, so it's a great double whammy. And ginkgo, if you take ginkgo, obviously these things you might want to consult with the doctor. I am not a doctor, but ginkgo is something that improves your memory and your cognition, so it's great for that. And physical exercise, great. And then really giving yourself props. If you go for a walk, simple exercise, dance is one of the ones, and especially music really helps release dopamine a ton, especially good music. And so really reward yourself. Like, be like, yes, I even have like a checklist. 3 times a week, I make sure I get to yoga. And when I check those off, it feels so good, and I do a little happy dance, and that is a great way to release dopamine. So you wanna look at small goals and then giving yourself appreciation for reaching those goals. That's a huge one for releasing dopamine. Meditation, I'm someone who really loves meditation and feels so like it's so valuable, but it's also cool that it releases dopamine. And there's certain postures that you can get into that help release dopamine. More powerful positions and postures can help release dopamine. So I hope this helps you, and I hope that you'll go to my website and learn more about what I do and how to get more in touch with your mind, body, soul. Have a great day.